Well, today we are wrapping up our series called Under the Sun. And we gave this series that title for two reasons. The first one is ancient King Solomon uses that phrase, under the sun, in his writings to capture the idea of everyday life. And the second reason is because it's summer. And I really hope you've been having a great summer so far. One of my highlights has been watching how invested so many of us became in the World Cup. And it's been a while since I've watched football, and yes, I'm making a statement. I'm talking about the real football, where the ball spends more time with your feet than it does in your hands. But I decided I was gonna jump on the bandwagon and watch the World Cup final. So my wife and I decided to have this little World Cup final mini party. And so we had the wings and the pizza and the drinks and some friends watching with us. And we made it through the first 45 minutes and got to halftime. And then we made it to the halftime show. Now, if you're a real football fan, you know where this is going. In the history of the game, there has never, ever been a halftime show at the World Cup final, and it bothered me so much that they've changed it. My last thought before I went to bed that day wasn't, God, thank you so much for the gift of life. Every breath I have is a gift from you. My last thought was, they're changing the game. Why are they doing that? And maybe you're silently judging me right now. That's okay. Let me put this into perspective for you. I was feeling the same emotion you felt when we went from plastic straws to paper straws. I was feeling the exact same thing you felt the first time you sat down to watch your favorite movie or show on a streaming service that you pay for monthly, and then out of nowhere, in a really tense moment of the story, an ad popped up, and it didn't even have a skip button. And I think it's interesting the way that we respond to minor changes in our lives that really have no significant impact on our lives. But I think that the fear and the frustration and the fatigue that we experience when navigating change that has real impact, I think that's an entirely different story. I was having this conversation with my dad not so long ago, and I was saying, Dad, here's the thing. I just recently got married, and that's really good, but it's a change I'm adjusting because I'm used to just making decisions for myself and doing what's good for me, but now I have to think of somebody else's needs before I think of my own. And that's the kind of person I want to be, but I'm adjusting. It's a change. And then on top of that, I've got a new job, and so I'm trying to figure out how to fit into this team and how to learn as fast as I can. And then on top of that, I have friendships in my life that aren't what they used to be. Things look a little different now. I'm trying to figure out these friendship dynamics. And I said, Dad, I'm really just looking forward to a time when things will settle down and I don't have to navigate so much change in my life. And my dad just slowed things down and looked deep into my soul. And he said, Bomba, the only thing consistent in life is change. And I thought to myself, wow, that's the last thing I wanted to hear right now. I was hoping for something a little more motivational or comforting. But the more that I sit with that, the more I think he's right. Change is inevitable. You're either coming out of change, or you're in the middle of big change right now, or it's coming. And so I think the question for us today isn't, is change coming? It for sure is coming. But here's the question for us today. When change comes, do you brace against it, or do you lean in? Do you brace and resist, or do you lean into it? A few summers ago, I decided to try something different, and I have a really good friend who's a semi-professional dirt bike racer, and he said, hey, Bomba, you should get on a dirt bike sometime. And I thought, yeah, sure, why not? Let me try something different. And so he gives me, the rundown. Here's the throttle, the gas, and here's how you change gears. And he puts me on this bike that's just way too big for me. I can't even touch the ground. And he says, here we go. And he takes me to this track that has quite a few sharp curves and turns in it. And what I had to learn very quickly was what you naturally want to do when you're on the bike and approaching a curve or turn is you lean or you turn the handlebars into the turn, but you find yourself leaning away from the turn, from the curve. And I learned the hard way that when you do that, you're actually more likely to wipe out. The proper technique is to lean into the turn, to lean into what feels counterintuitive. I think change is a little bit like that. When we brace against it, we're fighting something and it actually leads to a wipeout. And I think there's an invitation for us to look at change as something that we can lean into. I know I've seen this in my life, and maybe you have as well. I've seen what wiping out looks like when I brace against change. In my life, it's looked like this. It's looked like bitterness. And I keep asking the question, why does this keep happening to me? I thought I would never have to deal with this. For me, wiping out looks like this. I become numb. And because I've gone through changes, or perhaps you've gone through changes and you've been hurt over and over again, you actually get to a place where you don't hope anymore. You don't think anything good is ever going to happen, and you just go through the motions. For me, wiping out has looked like this: control. You become a control freak, and you hold on so tightly to what you have because you don't want it to change. And you hold on so tight and take such a strong grip that you actually miss out on what's on the other side of the curve. And my challenge and invitation for us today, my challenge and invitation for you, is that when you follow Jesus and when you follow God, there's a way that you can lean into the change instead of just bracing against it. And today I want us to look at a story of someone that does this really well. His name is Abram. And in the second half of the Bible, there's this long passage where the author is basically communicating, if you want to look at somebody that's made good decisions in life, if you want a role model, if you want an example to follow, look at these people. And one of the people mentioned in that passage is Abram. This is what it says about him. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go to a place that he was going to receive as an inheritance. He went out without knowing where he was going. Do you catch why Abraham is in the Hall of Fame? It's not because he won a big battle. It's not because he conquered a massive army. It's not because he built a massive empire. He's in the Hall of Fame because he went out without knowing where he was going. And so what I would love for us to do today is to look at Abram's story and see why this is so significant and what this has to do with us leaning into change. And so we're going to read the beginning part of Abram's story, and then we're going to zoom in and slowly unpack what does this mean for our lives today. And maybe you're asking yourself, well, I'm not quite sure what you're referring to when you say approaching the curve or leaning into change. I know that for me, I come from a really big family. I was born in Zambia, which is in southern Africa, and we actually border with Congo and Zimbabwe and Malawi. And I come from a family where my dad has 16 siblings, and my mom has 14 siblings. And so we did the math recently, and I have over 120 first cousins, and then there's second cousins. And when we were living in Zambia, there was never a time in our lives where it was just the nuclear family. We always had our cousins, our uncles, our aunts staying with us, just a strong sense of family and community. And when I was 8, my parents said, we're gonna have to pack up and go. We're gonna have to move. And so we do that. We moved to the Netherlands and started learning the language and start to learn the way of life and learning new language. And we're slowly building a life. And then 6 years later, my parents say, oof, we're going to have to move again. It's like, all right, we've done this once before, maybe we could do it again. And so then we moved to Ireland, and then we started building a life there. And then 2 years later, the global recession hits, and my dad's job is in jeopardy. And it's like, we're going to have to do this again. And we moved to Winnipeg. And you would think that every time you move, it gets easier. But the truth is, for me at least, it got harder every single time. Those were curves in the road that felt hard to navigate. And maybe you're not crossing an ocean. Maybe God is not calling you across the world. But you've been an athlete in high school and in college, and you were hoping to go professional. But then things change, you get injured, and that dream is completely gone. It's out of the picture. That's a curve on the road. You've been building your business and working so hard and poured so much sweat and time into building this thing so you could provide for your family. And it was going great, but then things change, recession hit, you're gonna have to lay some people off. And you are actually debating whether you might have to go work for someone again. That's a curve in the road. You've been in a relationship for 5 years, and you see this path in front of you that leads towards taking a step where you make a lifelong commitment to each other. And just as you're getting excited for that, things change. Relationship is over. That's a curve in the road. And the invitation for us today is to ask the question, how do I lean into that and stay steady through those curves and changes? I think Abram's story shows us that really well. Here's what Abram's story looks like. The Lord said to Abraham, leave your land, your family, and your father's household for the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name respected, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. Those who curse you, I will curse. All the families of the earth will be blessed because of you. Abraham left just as the Lord told him, and Lot went with him. That's his nephew. Now, Abraham was 75 years old when he left Haran. So here's what we know about our guy, Abraham. He's 75 years old when God approaches him and asks him to step into this major change. Now, I don't know what it's like to be 75, but here's what I imagine or anticipate. At 75, you've built quite a life for yourself, and you're not too interested with rocking the boat. I imagine you're feeling like you just want to settle down. I'm curious what this looked like for Abram. Was he just, chilling on his land? He's got his feet up. He's assessing all that he has, and he's sipping on a cold drink of goat milk, and he's just like, this life is good. I've had some ups and downs, but I'm okay with my life. And God approaches him and says, here's what I want you to do. And let's zoom in specifically on what God is saying. Here's what he says. I want you to leave your land, your family, and your father's household. I want you to leave your land, your home, the place that makes you feel secure, the place where you feel safe. I want you to leave your relatives, your extended family. I want you to leave them, leave the people that create the sense of belonging for you. And then leave your father's household. What that represents is your identity. In the ancient times, your father's household essentially means this is who I am. There's a strong sense of identity that comes with that. And God says, here's the change I'm calling you into, Abraham. I want you to leave everything that's familiar behind. Everything that provides you with comfort, everything that makes you feel secure and safe. I want you to step into major change where you leave that all behind. I did some research into why it's hard for us as humans to step into change. And there was two reasons that really popped out. The first one is this: change costs more energy. What the studies were showing is when you approach change, you're actually burning more fuel. My wife and I just hit our first year anniversary. And I recall a few months before we were getting married, my lease had expired and I was looking for a place to live. So what we decided was we would find our future home together, and I would move in a few months beforehand. And then when we're married, she would move in. And so I had about 5 to 6 months of just having the place to myself. And I recall on moving day, the first thing I want to do is get the kitchen organized. And so that's what I do. I put the plates right here where I know I'm going to find them. They're close to the stove because that makes sense to me. I put the cups over here, really close to the kettle and the tap. Everything's making sense. And I enjoyed the system for about 5 to 6 months. And then we get married and she moves in. If you ever had someone move in with you, you know exactly what happens. Not too long after we're married, I'm working from home and I need to take a quick break for about 5 minutes. I'm thinking I'm just gonna make myself a quick peanut butter sandwich. And so I make my way downstairs, open up this cupboard where the peanut butter has always been, and I'm staring at chicken broth. And it's like, okay, the peanut butter must be behind that. And so I move it, and nope, it's not there. How about this cupboard? Nope, it's not there. How about this one? And I had calculated this task of making a peanut butter sandwich would cost me maybe 2 minutes, right? Take out the peanut butter and the bread. I like to do both. Take the bread, put the butter, then the peanut butter, do the same thing with the other slice. Boom, done, 2 minutes max. I spent 10 minutes trying to find the peanut butter. Just to be clear about something, my wife's system of organizing things is way better than mine. It's just, it was unfamiliar to me. It was new. And so I was spending more energy accomplishing what I thought would be an easy task because the new and the unfamiliar costs more energy. It's why when you're learning a new skill, you're learning a new instrument, or you're trying to learn a new language, it's taxing on the brain because change costs more energy. And God is inviting Abram into this life where he can't be on autopilot, where he has to leave what's comfortable and perhaps even easy to step into a life where he's going to be working constantly and spending way more energy. The second thing that I saw in the studies about why change is hard for us is this. What we know feels safe. What we know feels safe. We take a lot of comfort in what we already know. The more I know about something, the more likely I am to feel comfortable. And the less that I know, the more likely I am to brace. When you think about the changes that you're experiencing in your life, oftentimes what you're being asked to do is step into the unknown. You don't know what's on the other side. You're not sure what's on the other side of this curve, and it feels scary. What your brain is actually doing in that moment when you're experiencing change is it's saying stranger danger. It tells you that change is danger. Even when you're stepping into good change, what the brain does first off, it says, you've never done this before. And so now you're walking into change. You're like, man, I've always looked forward to being a parent. I've always wanted to be a parent. And now I have this little kid, and you're happy about that. But at the same time, if you were honest, you're like, all I know is that I had a bad relationship with my parents, and things went really long. And I'm really worried that I'm going to make the same mistake. So I actually have this fear as I step into this positive change in my life. All you've ever known is that you've always had someone to help you raise your children, and now you're a single parent and you're like, I don't know how to do this. I'm trying to care for my children and make sure they're well taken care of, while at the same time also trying to take care of my soul. I have no idea what it's like to do these things at the same time. This is new to me. I don't know how to do this. Have you ever felt that in your life? I don't know how to do this. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I don't know how I'm going to survive this. And when we look at Abram's story, there's actually this invitation for us to realize that when you follow God, He doesn't just let you stay focused on what you know. He has something much better in mind. This is what it says in the next verse. God says to Abram, I will make of you a great nation and will bless you. I will make your name respected and you will be a blessing. See what God is doing there? When we're approaching change, we focus so much on what we know, and we focus so much on ourselves and our knowledge and our limitations. But God does something here that He seems to do repeatedly. This seems to be His typical MO. Every time He's talking or having conversation with someone and He's inviting them into great change, He does this one specific thing. He says, look at me. Look at me. Take the focus off of yourself and look at me. I want to show you that this is His MO. I want you to see this in His own words. At one point, when God is speaking through prophets, He says this to one of the prophets, Isaiah, to His people, fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand. You see what He's doing there? Look at me. Jesus does this exact same thing when He's talking to His disciples. He's been crucified and resurrected, and now He's physically about to leave the earth, and He gives this massive command to His disciples, the people following Him. And He says, go and make disciples of all nations. And He says, here's why you can do that. I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. And be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. In a time before this, He's talking to His disciples and they're worried, what are things going to look like after you're gone, Jesus? And He says, I won't leave you as orphans. I will come to you. In this moment, what He's telling them is, when I'm gone physically, I will send the Holy Spirit to be with you. I will not leave you abandoned. I will send you help. Every time God is having conversation with someone stepping into major change, He takes the focus off of them and He says, look at me. It seems like what God is concerned with isn't so much what you know. He's more concerned with who you know. That the courage to step into change doesn't come from how much knowledge you have, from how good you are at fill in the blank, but that the courage to change actually comes from who you know. Let's be honest, some of us have had jobs that we were completely unqualified for, and you got the job not because of what you know, but because of who you know. There's some of that going on here. I remember the first time that I went skydiving. I decided this has been a dream of mine. So when I graduated from high school, I skipped my grad dinner and drove out and paid someone to jump out of a plane. And the instructor is showing me what things are going to look like. And he said, once we get to this altitude, we're going to ask you to put your legs out of the plane. And then you're going to hold on. And then once we get to this altitude, you're going to pull your knees in and you're going to roll over. And then we're going to free fall for this long. And then once we get to this altitude, you're going to put your hands out like this to slow you down a little bit. And then once we get to this altitude, you're going to pull the parachute. And I'm like, there's no way I'm remembering any of that. But sure, let's give this a try. And the truth is, once we got up there, I forgot absolutely everything. I did nothing. I just screamed the whole way down, and he did everything. But I felt safe. Not because of what I know, because I know this guy's experienced. He knows what he's doing. I trust him. And I just met him today, but I trust him. This is his job. I think I'm going to be okay. And I think that's the invitation that God has for us, to take the focus off of what we know and to look at who we know. This is the part in Abram's story that just absolutely blows my mind. It says this in verse 4. Abraham left just as the Lord told him. Abraham left just as the Lord told him. It is wild to me that there's no record of any negotiation. If this were me, I would have said, now just slow down 1 second, hold on a minute, let's talk through this. How long is this going to take? How long will I be traveling? Is this like a 1 week thing? Is this like a few weeks? Is this a few months? Is this a few years? And the truth for Abram was his entire life, but he didn't know that. God didn't tell him how long this would take. He didn't know where he was going. But as far as we know, he simply left. He packed up everything at the age of 75, uprooted his entire life, and stepped into major change. And you don't step into that kind of change unless you really trust the God that's calling you into that change. You don't step into that kind of change unless you trust the promises that he's making to you. And earlier on, we read some of the words that God spoke to people that were going through change, and he was giving them promises. The promises he was given was, I am with you. I will be with you. I will strengthen you. I will hold you. I will be with you. And you can tell who a person is by what they say repeatedly, by the stories that they keep repeating. You can tell who a person is by what they do repeatedly. And when you look at who God is, he repeatedly says, I will be with you. He doesn't promise that things will be easier right away. He doesn't promise that you won't go through pain as you navigate the change. I know you've been showing up at that job every day, and it's a job that you dreamed for, and you're like, I really want this job, you got it, and then you got there and it was like, oof, I'm not sure about this workplace, and your boss does not value you at all, and it's a toxic work culture. You're like, oh man, this is not what I wanted. And God's like, I'm not saying it's going to get easier right away, but here's what I do promise. I will be with you. I know this summer's looked a little different. Normally you're traveling and maybe you're traveling with your family, your spouse, or a loved one, but this summer's looked a little different because your loved one is no longer around, and it's felt lonely and it's felt hard. And what God promises isn't I will revert things back to what they were. He says, I will be with you. I think my challenge and invitation for us today is you can find courage to lean into the change, not because everything magically becomes easier, but because you can trust the God that says he'll be with you in that change. You can step into change, not because of what you know, but because of who you know. I think God has a desire, I know he has a desire for us to be able to walk through change and remain steady through it. And this is what it looks like to remain steady through the change. Instead of bitterness, your heart and your posture shifts to gratitude. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? You begin to ask or see, man, God, thank you for the things you have put in my life. I know there's so much that's out of my control, and I know that I can't control this, but thank you so much for the people you've placed in my life. I think this is what it looks like to walk through change steady. Instead of being numb, you get filled with hope. You start to believe that I will get through this. There is a God that can carry me. It won't stay like this forever. My heart won't always feel so heavy. I will learn to love again. You go from feeling numb to having hope. I think walking steady through change looks like this. Instead of being a control freak, you actually learn how to surrender. Instead of holding so tightly to everything, You actually learn to let go and say, I don't know what the future looks like. Seasons come, seasons go, things are always changing. And so I'm actually going to walk through life open-handed and say, I'm grateful for what I have today. I'm grateful for what I'm experiencing today. And I don't know what tomorrow looks like, but I'm not going to hold on so tightly that I miss what God has for me. My hope and desire for every single one of us listening to this is that we can learn what it looks like to lean into the change instead of bracing against it. That we remain steady through gratitude, hope, and surrender. I mentioned earlier that when I was young, we moved, and what I didn't tell you was that my dad moved a couple years before us to the Netherlands, and so we had a few years where we were separated, and that's just because it was gonna take time to get the paperwork done. He got a scholarship to do some studies, and so he had to go. And when we eventually got the green light and they said, everything's in place, you can now go join your dad, I was having this conversation with my many cousins, and they said, man, do you know what to expect out there? Like, do you know what it's like? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm 8 years old. I don't know what's in the Netherlands. I don't know what that road looks like. And we were trying to figure out, like, what language do they speak? And honestly, the question we were asking is there black people there? Like, we were trying to figure out, what is this going to look like? And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know what it looks like over there, but here's what I do know. I know my dad. I know that he's over there, and I know that if he's saying come, then it means that's going to be a good thing. I know that he's prepared things for me. I know that he's going to make sure we're okay, but most importantly, I know I'll be reunited with him. So this change that we're stepping into is going to be worth it because I know him. I think that's the invitation God has for us today. When you think about the change that you're walking through right now, as hard as it is, God has this invitation where he says, I want to walk with you. I want to be with you. It won't be easy, but I've got your back. I promise I will walk with you. And there's an invitation for us today to trust who God is and to trust his promises in our lives. So how do we apply this today? How do you apply that this week? Well, my challenge, again, an invitation to you, is to find out who God is. And there's a few ways that you can do that. The first is you can get to know his character and his way of doing things. Now that might mean reading your Bible, sure. That might mean going to church and hearing about God. But what I'm actually talking about here is something a lot deeper. See, you really get to know someone not just through reading about them, but by having experiences with them, by having moments where you're walking together. And there's an invitation from God to say, instead of just reading about me, instead of just hearing about me week after week, what if you trusted me for the first time with one thing in your life and truly trusted me with it? There was a time when God would speak through his prophets, and one of the prophets that he was interacting with, his name is Ezekiel, he says this, he uses this poetry to describe how much he trusts God. He says, God, you are the potter, and I am the clay. And there's something really vulnerable about that when you think about it, because how much say does clay have in what happens to it? How much say does the clay have in what it goes through? There's this trust that Ezekiel's communicating where he says, God, I trust you so much that whatever you want to do in my life, I completely trust you because I know who you are. So my challenge for us today is get to know who God is through firsthand personal experience. Take a chance and trust him with just one change, one thing in your life. The second thing you can do is ask God, what are you doing in me through this change? The question isn't, God, what's happening to me? The question isn't, what am I going to do? But the question is, God, what are you doing in me through this change? What might God be producing in you that you didn't even know you needed? What is God doing inside of you that you didn't know you desperately needed for your friends to help somebody else walk through something difficult? What if there's a season of life coming that you can't anticipate? There's a curve coming around the bend and you can't see it yet, but God knows it's coming. He's preparing you right now for that very thing. God, what are you doing in my life right now through this change? And the third thing is this: keep showing up. Don't stop showing up. You know, for some of us, for some of you, you have grown children, and when you see pictures of your kids, it makes you a little sad because it reminds you of times when, you know, they were really young and you were their hero, but then things happened along the way in life And now there's no communication. Maybe it's limited to just a happy birthday message, but they don't want to talk to you. They're distancing themselves from you, and you've been praying for them, and maybe they're making decisions in their lives that are harmful for them, and it's hard for you to watch, but they're not letting you in, and you keep praying. You're like, how long can I do this? When will things change? Keep showing up. Keep showing up. You might be surprised to find out that this God who loves you deeply and this God who cares for you deeply has been doing something, is doing something right now. And if you press eject too soon, you might miss out on it. Keep showing up. It won't be easy, but keep showing up. Keep praying, keep walking, keep talking, keep showing up and getting to know this God. If you're new to church and you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm not sure if I can do this, or I'm not sure if I trust what this guy is saying, I want you to hear it from God himself. Here's what God says to us. I am the Lord, and I do not change. The courage to step into change doesn't come from what you know. It comes from who you know. And the God that you're invited to get to know is a God that does not change. His promises always come true. When he says, I'll show up for you, he shows up. When he says, I will hold you, he holds you. When he says, I will carry you, he carries you. He cannot change. He cannot lie. And that's the God you're being invited to get to know today. What if you walked away from this place and stepped into this week, this month, this year, with the courage to lean into the change instead of bracing against it because of the God that you're learning to know? In just a little bit, we'll have a moment to even respond to that. But my prayer and hope for all of us is that we would take even just one step forward to lean into the change in our lives, not because it's going to be easy, but because we know who God is. Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, God, you are such a good God, and you're such a great God. And seasons come and seasons go, and we really can't predict the future. And there's so much in life that often can feel unstable. And it's hard to know who we can trust, and it's hard to know what to hold on to. But God, I thank you that you don't leave us abandoned. Thank you that you just leave us to our own limitations. You don't leave us to our own knowledge. You actually take our focus and point it to you. So God, I pray for every single person in this room. Help us to see you. Help us to get to know you. God, I pray that you'd give us the courage to take one step forward with even just one thing in our lives and say, God, I'm going to trust you with this change. God, would you help us to walk through change steady? Would you help us to walk through change with gratitude, with hope, and with surrender? So God, I pray for every single person that feels like this is an impossible task. God, I pray that they would experience you in a real way, not just in this moment right now, but even as they step into the rest of the week. Would you show yourself to them? Would you show yourself to us? Thank you that you are trustworthy. Thank you that you are reliable. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.